Yeah, we're back underneath the car here today. And redo something we already did. I really wasn't happy with the condition of the original master cylinder. The can wasn't in very good shape. So I decided to buy a new can, even though they're several $100s, not including the internals. And I'm just every solution creates a problem, because now my rod does not line up with the pedal, and this is the new improved rod, not the ball and socket type linkage that was in there before. One of the things about the ball and socket linkage, see if we can keep the light there, is that it can operate in a number of different angles. This new and improved linkage only has one angle, just a hinge in the middle here. And the problem is that in order to line this up, the rod is not in the center of the piston, and it's dragging on the side because it's in a bind. And what that will do is not only make the clutch hard to operate, the clutch pedal, because the rod is binding in there, but it will also eventually destroy the piston inside because it's not pushing on its square. So you've got to make sure that this rod is in the center of the piston and pushing down in the middle. I mean, you get a little bit off one way or the other, but it shouldn't be touching the sides of the piston. So now the question becomes, how do we fix this? And to be honest, the only solution that I see at this point is to heat this part of the pedal and bend it over that way to line up. Now, I don't really understand, to be honest with you, how we got in this situation. This ain't rocket science here. This bracket back here is fixed in place. It certainly didn't get bent. I got a hard time believing that the pedal got bent. I just don't know. I don't know if this, I don't know if it was cockeyed before, because there's a rubber boot that goes on here, and I really didn't notice any of this until I took the rubber boot off, because the pedal was kind of draggy and I wanted to see why. So it may have been cockeyed with the old master cylinder. Don't know. I don't know if this new master cylinder is not, the sleeve in the center is not perfectly straight. Don't know. Seems to me that it's bolted over here. It's really got to be square with this bracket back here. It should be square out here. Nevertheless, I got a problem. The other thing that started this whole thing is this pedal spring is like worthless. I mean, it doesn't it doesn't do anything. You can push the pedal down that far and the spring doesn't pull it back. So I'm either going to have to get a stronger spring or cut that spring and put some more tension on that, because that certainly should pull that pedal back when there's no effort or anything on it. It ought to pull that pedal back. So I think we're going to just get the torch out and try to heat this part of the bottom part of the pedal right in here, bend it over that away so it lines up. The other thing we're going to have to do, in my opinion, is this little eyelet that they give you on the new and improved version. I think I'm going to have to heat this and put a little curve in it so that we move the hinge point back. The way this is working right now, this hinge point just doesn't work without binding. So the key here is to get the rod in the center of the piston and to get this hinge point to work without binding, and that's what we're going to have to do. We'll dig out some tools and see what we can figure out. After considerable heating and prying and pushing and twisting, we got things to line up a little better. Back here, don't know how well you can see it, the rod is not perfectly centered, but pushing in the center of the piston rather than dragging on the side. So we got this, bent this part of the pedal in and got that lined up. The next problem we had was when we screwed this eyelet in, it put the pivot down too low and the rod wanted to drag on the bottom of the piston. So we put a little kink in that eyelet and the stem of the eyelet to bend it up a little bit. Ideally, I'd like to go a little bit more, but sometimes you got to quit while you're ahead. Right now, the rod is not dragging on the side of the piston. It's clearly hitting in the depression in the bottom of the piston, so it's going to push the piston square. Our pivot pin here doesn't have any preload on it. It's not bound up. We also cut this spring down so that the pedal returns like it should, so that there's no pressure on the piston. We leave, I don't know what that is, not quite 1/8 of an inch, somewhere between a 1/16 and 1/8 of an inch of clearance between the end of the rod and the piston, just so that when you're off the pedal, this spring pulls the pedal back and there's no pressure on the piston in the master cylinder. So I think that's probably as good as it's going to get. We can press the brake pedal, and we've got to bleed the brakes, of course, but we get a pretty good pedal there after a couple of pumps. I think that's as good as it's going to get. I don't know how we got in that situation, but I think we've cured it, and hopefully when the judges crawl around here, they won't notice that we bent the pedal a little bit. The bad news is now I got to take the whole thing apart again, put the rubber boot back on, but we can do that.